Welcome to Let's Talk with Hart Hagan, and today I'm joined by Denita Wright. Denita, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you. Glad to
Great.
be here.
Well, we're going to talk about Cornell West, and I wanted to start off just read from. We're doing the book Race Matters, and Race Matters has an About the Author section at the end, and I'm going to read that, and we'll go from there. Cornell West is a prominent and provocative Democratic intellectual. He graduated magna cum laude from Harvard University in 3 years and obtained his MA and PhD in philosophy at Princeton University. He has taught at Union Theological Seminary, Yale, Harvard, Princeton, and the University of Paris. He has written 20 books and edited 13, including Black Prophetic Fire and The Radical King, a collection that reclaims Dr. Martin Luther King's prophetic and radical vision as both a civil rights leader and a human rights activist. Dr. West has also made 3 spoken word albums, including Never Forget, collaborating with Prince, Jill Scott, Andre 3000, Talib Kweli, KRS-One, and Gerald Levert. He is currently professor of the practice of public philosophy at Harvard University. I love the idea of public philosophy. It's philosophy that's relevant to the public sphere.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I like it when you can break it down and incorporate it into everyday, life that where people are struggling or people are having it harder than others, and you've got this philosophy for them, to incorporate into their life.
as opposed to history, I don't know about the history you were taught. I was taught history. History was about great people. History is about hero worship. History is about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and
Yeah,
Dwight Eisenhower, Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
yeah,
Occasionally, you have a person of color like Dr. Martin Luther King. Of course, they whitewash him.
yeah,
Frederick Douglass, it's like, who's that?
yeah.
And then hardly anything else as far as people of color. But the way history is usually taught is just it's a few great people do, and no wonder it's boring.
Well, I don't know about boring. It was kind of exciting when it depends on your teacher that is telling you all of this. Like I never looked at George Washington any different than when my college professor just did a reenactment of his his going standing in the boat and they're going to fight the British. So I like that. He kind of brought it to life. If you bring it to life to me, and take me there. I'm kind of a visual person
Do you
anyway.
remember? Do you remember the Norman Lear comedy Good Times?
Yes.
J.J. Walker. So there was this one episode where this salesman came by, and this salesman was selling a Black History encyclopedia.
Yeah.
And it turned out the guy was a fraud, but and JJ opened it up, and there was a picture of George Washington crossing the Delaware River, standing up in the boat, and then there's some Black people in the boat. It's like, okay, there's Black people in the boat. That's Black history. And and JJ said, "Hey, George is standing up, and the Black people are sitting down. That's a switch."
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
For real.
So
That tells you that shows you, the things that can be planted in your head.
hmm hmm
When you look the things that you're shown as well as the things that are read to you, those things really stay in your head. So you are having a different kind of historical teaching.
I've recently been reading alternative histories, and I don't even like to say alternative, but people's histories. Like Howard Zinn wrote The People's History of the United States, and there's a bunch of other people's histories that kind of spun off from that. One of them is an African American and Latinx history of the United States. One is an indigenous people's history of the United States. And I think it was that Latin American and Latinx people's history of the United States. It said this, and I'd never seen it that way, and now I absolutely believe it. And what it said was that we owe more of our freedoms to people of color than we do to Europe. Because what we're taught is that our freedoms come from Europe. You know, you have Thomas Jefferson, who was a student of John Locke, and John Locke wrote this or that, or had this or that philosophy. And you have, Ben Franklin was a person of the Enlightenment, and the Enlightenment was about Voltaire and Rousseau. Okay, fine. But look at what we owe to people of color. You have people like Frederick Douglass. You have I know so little about Sojourner Truth, or I'm learning a little bit more about W.E.B. Du Bois. But you have, looking at the facts of history, Mexico outlawed slavery a long time before we did. That's one thing. Haiti was the first country of free men, the first country in that was completely in the world, the first country of completely free men. Haiti was Haiti was the only successful slave revolt in history. Yeah. And you have the constant, Latino people who were, have been really big in the labor struggle, Cesar Chavez. And you have the Cuban Revolution, which gets a bad reputation in the United States because supposedly they were on the wrong side of the Cold War. But I tell you, there's another way of looking at that whole thing. Go ahead.
Look at the amount of leaders that you've named in one breath. Look at that. But look how long ago that was. I mean, great leaders. So what happened? What happened to our great leaders? Cornell, he speaks of the leaders of today, and he says, one reason quality leadership is on the wane in Black America is the gross deterioration of personal, familial, and communal relationships among African Americans. So if we are so distant from each other, and we don't have that family around the dinner table talks like we used to, or historical talks too. It used to be historical talks too. We can't empower each other. We are, like he says, just disconnected from everything, absolutely everything. And if you don't have something to look up to, then the leaders are, you have a leaderless, you don't have those great leaders like you used to have. We can admire Frederick Douglass or Martin Luther King, but that was years and years and years, decades ago. Who can we look up to now? Who can we speak of? And you cannot keep letting time roll on, and then there's no great leaders to step up and give us, okay, I want to be like, give us an incentive, give us a spark, to pass that torch on. You can't let that amount of time pass by. So my thing is, I'm totally agreeing with Cornell that, we need some more communal action. We need some more, family, to talk about family, because guess what? Even though you might not have great leaders in a nation, let's bring it down home, you may have had great leaders in your family. You know, there's a lot of schools around here, Hart, in Louisville, Kentucky, that were named after Black Americans that are being, you know, disappearing, you know, and there were great Black women who were great construction owners of construction building, and they built like Alpha Gardens. The lady that built Alpha Garden, I can't remember her name, but and she also, I think she did, I think that was the same one that created the Galleria. Also, that was a Black woman construction worker, not worker, but owner of a construction company. So we've had people who the stoplight the stoplight at Wilson and Algonquin. The reason it's there is because a woman laid down in the street. I think her straight name was May Street Kid. I believe that was her. Don't quote me on that, but she laid literally in the street every day, you know, because they demanded a stoplight to be there. There's a lot of great leaders in our community, but we don't have that table talk to talk about it, to pass it down to the kids. You know, we don't have a venue. We don't have some place where we're gathered around to speak about that to kids, because it is all inspiring. These people, they all aren't all inspiring, but how can you inspire someone that you don't have time to sit down and speak about it with? So I think that's why I agree again with Cornell that that's why we are lacking in leadership, because
let me ask you a couple of questions. So you read this quote, and I'm wanting to ask you, like, what is he saying, and why is it that way, and then what's the solution? Is that a fair question?
Well, yeah. I think again what he's saying is that we need a way of passing down incentives. I'm going to say incentives for the next generation to be somebody. You know, we need a way, and the reason why we need that is because people need connections. They need to be connected to something. If we are, he also spoke earlier in his book that we are rootless and dangling. We've created these rootless, dangling people that don't have a connection to anything. So I totally agree with that too. Great leader.
How did it get that way? I mean, I have my ideas about how it got that way, but how did it get that way?
From I think the technology came into play, and so everybody went in their own corner of the room, own corner of the house. You know, television came into being. You know, we started watching TV, and that became our kids' babysitters. You know, so disconnect came with technology. We're just now because of the COVID. I've had more conversations with my family members on the online meeting groups than I've ever had ever. And so, you know, there's something growing. I think there's a growth. Maybe it's turning over. This technology that separated us is now bringing us together. So it may be a turnover, and out of it, we may find great leaders.
Well, I'm reading this book called BS Jobs, except it spells out the BS, you know, but BS Jobs is the name of the book. And I thought it would kind of be like an in-your-face kind of thing, but the author's an anthropologist. He's very thorough and very methodical. And I would have thought, I would have thought that we have, the idea is that most people work in jobs that they think are not doing any good for society. And this is probably not what the author would say, but I would say that the powers that be want to keep us busy because, in fact, he did say that at one point. You know,
Yeah.
if we had time on our hands, you know, we would be a serious threat to the powers that be. If we had time on our hands, if we had time to participate in government, time
Yeah.
to deliberate, and if we had freedom from corporate indoctrination, then we
Yes.
would be a serious threat to the
Yes.
powers that be. And
Yeah.
see, when you talk about entertainment, and let's go back to like when radio came about, and especially TV. You know,
Mhm.
TV came about in the early 50s. I used to think that TV commercials were a way of paying for programming so that we could have the programming.
Mhm.
But now I think that the programming is a way of getting you to the TV so you can see the commercials and buy the stuff. You know, so they have technology of all types. As long as you have a few people that are in charge at the very top,
Yeah.
then they use it for their purposes. And
Yeah.
if they need to keep us, if they want to sell us something, they'll do that. But they also want to keep us busy and distracted and overwhelmed and tired and sick. And they don't want a good life for us.
Right. Right. Well, I told you that the before, we were talking before, the more that you have, the more you want. It's insatiable to have so much in life that you're satisfied, because you're not. You'll never be satisfied, and you'll always want more. So in order to get more, you got to pump more out of people, and that'll come into play as they turn us from humans to consumers. You know, they can get more out of us. So I think that that's all has to do with the greed in America. And
You said humans versus consumers, and see, what you're supposed to think is consuming is the highest state of human. The most human thing is to consume, and that you're at your best when you're consuming. That's what you're supposed to think.
yeah, that's what they've got us that way too.
Mhm.
They've got us programmed that way also. It's not Christmas unless you buy. It's it's not Easter unless you got all this candy. You have to buy all this candy. It's not a Valentine's Day if you don't buy these flowers. You don't buy this box of chocolates. It's not Mother's Day unless you buy this card for her. You can't just go and hug her, and you got to buy this card. That's a must. Yeah, it is. They've turned us into consumers. They've replaced it with simple love.
You know, America is kind of unusual in that when radio and TV, when radio came along in the 30s, it was decided that we were just going to give the airwaves over to commercial interests and hardly make them pay anything for
Mhm.
that. So for one thing, they don't pay us anything for the right to use the public airwaves.
Yeah.
And for another thing, we hardly get any access to that. You know, if Hart Hagan was king of the world, we would have, you know, the public would have at least half of the radio stations and
Yeah.
half of the TV stations.
Exactly.
But instead, what we have is commercial interests just come in and run the price up of commercial airtime to the point where elections are really expensive. And
Yeah.
then that way, that's where the commercial interests want it to be. They don't want it to be cheap to win an
Right.
election. They want it to be expensive to win an election. So they have to, so that they can buy our elected officials. What am I missing?
Exactly. So you notice that commercials have gotten longer. They're practically a soap opera. you know, an hour or so long, and I think that's for the most expensive things that you can buy. They've got these hour long commercials whereas they used to be seconds there. only in what is it, the Super Bowl, are 8 seconds long. But yeah, it's gotten very, very consumer driven.
So Cornell West talks about the commercialization. I'm going to just paraphrase some of what he seems to be saying,
Mm-hmm.
that we have a market driven culture, and that tends to devalue some of the things that ought to be important, and that leads to something that he calls nihilism, which I take to mean, I think when he says nihilism, it literally means nothingism. It's the idea that, life doesn't have any inherent meaning. It's just whatever you can grab, whatever you can
Right.
get, whatever pleasure, whatever stimulation you can manage to get.
Right.
And I, that he's saying, I think that has a profound negative impact on everybody, not least of all the African American community. And to me, it's relevant here because it displaces the church and the family and free time, etc. Not like the good old days, but it displaces like labor unions, which might be able to bargain for better work hours, better safety on the job, etc.
Yeah, that's you.
I say blame it all on the big corporations. That's my philosophy. Blame everything on the big corporations, because it's all about me. It's just totally consumed our culture. And government is supposed to be a counterbalance to that. But when government is bought by the big commercial interests, then there's nothing protecting us from the big commercial interests, and the ones that suffer most are the most vulnerable.
Well, aren't they supposed to be like corporations? Aren't they supposed to be our big brothers that the money trickles down to
Oh
us
yeah, trickle
in
down, trickle down.
this capitalistic
Right.
system? They're supposed to trickle that money down to take care of us.
Mm-hmm.
They're our big brothers, big sisters. They're supposed to take care. Somewhere along the way, they got a little greedy, and the trickle just turned into little drops. And now they just want it all for nothing. They want you to do more, and they want it all.
Okay, so let me ask you, was there ever a time when you believed in trickle down?
No, I didn't. I've always believed that, even reading the Constitution, I've always believed that somewhere along the way, somebody turned it upside down. I believe that it was supposed to be a socialistic system with a capitalistic concept, and somebody turned it to a capitalistic system with a socialistic concept.
So how does that work? What was it, and then what did it become?
Capitalistic system as it is now with a socialistic concept is that you can get all that you want, but make sure that you, out of the goodness of your heart, pour it down to those that don't, the have-nots. A socialistic concept with a socialistic system with a capitalistic concept is you make all that you want, but make sure that the have-nots don't go down too far. So now the focus is not on the haves, the focus is on the have-nots.
Are you saying it's that way now?
No, I'm saying that's the way it was supposed to be, but the way it is now is total opposite. It is a capitalistic system where the focus is on the capitalists, the corporate entities, and not the have-nots. And it should be on the have-nots, that the primary focus on the have-nots, because the haves, they're okay. But in this system that we have, the focus is, it's take care of it. The whole world, this whole nation goes into a panic, and we saw that with the Wall Street debacle, when the banks and everybody was, in need of money. Hurry up and pour that money out to them. 7 billion?
When are you talking about?
The 2008.
Okay.
2008. Yes. The Wall Street downfall thing that happened in Wall Street. Yes. And so there was a nervousness, and even the Federal Reserve dared the government to do an investigation of them. They literally say, we dare you. You don't want to do that. So it opened up a lot of doors and let you see a lot of things. The fear that America is under with these corporations. It's like they've got them by they've got them gripped, got a grip on them, to where, if you let us fall, America, you will fall. It's like they're mafiistic, the corporations, but when it still has a chance of turning into a socialistic system with a capitalistic concept. Make all you want. Go ahead, make all that you want, but don't let your fellow man fall down to the point where they're, in the streets, without food. Don't let that happen. Keep an eye on them.
Well, let me read something else from Race Matters. So we've been talking about Chapter 3, the crisis of Black leadership. It starts off with this quote from Malcolm X. He says, "You don't stick a knife in a man's back 9 inches and then pull it out 6 inches and say you're making progress. No matter how much respect, no matter how much recognition whites show towards me, as far as I'm concerned, as long as it is not shown to every one of our people in this country, it doesn't exist for me." Malcolm X, 1964.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, I'm going to bash Obama for a minute, and I think with good reason. But somebody was asking me, I was hard put to come up with a single thing that he did. I mean, healthcare, what did he do? What did he do? What did he actually, we didn't get single payer. We didn't get a public option. We just got this system that keeps giving all the money to Wall Street corporations. War and empire. He was every bit as much of an imperialist as George W. Bush. What else? The prison industrial complex. You would think that the first Black president would curtail the mass incarceration that has resulted in disproportionately people of color being imprisoned for nonviolent drug offenses. Most of those nonviolent drug offenses are for possession of marijuana, a drug that is safer than tobacco or alcohol. And, the only thing I can think of that Obama actually did is the Iran deal. He had a deal with Iran where, there was kind of a little bit of nuclear control there. Which even then, and then another thing that Obama did on the negative side of the ledger is he entered into a deal with Israel to give them $3.9 billion per year for 10 years of military aid. Here's a country that can afford to give its own people health care, and we're giving them $3.9 billion a year, not of humanitarian aid, but of military aid. And I'm just thinking, the fact that Obama was president, it's like sticking the knife in 9 inches, pulling it out 6 inches, and calling that progress.
And to me, coming from a Black person's point of view, you have to be a Black person to really look at him differently. What he did accomplish because you and I have no idea what it's like up there in that atmosphere in the White House, in that particular atmosphere.
Here we
We
go.
can only
Go ahead. Go
assume that
ahead.
it's like
Here we go.
sharks
Here we go.
swimming in a bay of sharks, you know, and especially to a man of color. That's the first time I'd seen president get disrespected when that man yelled
Yeah.
out liar, you know, at a State of a Union address. I've never seen that before. And that to me was the downfall of respect for that office. And it really took away value from that office and respect. So what he was faced with, what he encountered or endured, for a man to run across the front lawn of the White House and able to get into the door of the White House, and all of those guards and dogs around and nobody bothered him. To me, this is my personal opinion, it seemed like somebody was sending a message to him that you don't do too much or else we will let something happen to your kids or your wife. You know, that was just in our circle, in my circle of friends, in my circle, that's what we felt. That's the way we felt. So for him to create the Affordable Care Act, that was a big step that nobody else was able to do. I mean, Senator Kennedy, Ted Kennedy, till his death, was trying to do it. But that was a giant step. It wasn't, you know, the complete package, perfect package, but it was a foundation. It was a giant step or a foundation to go ahead and build it into something greater. And they just want to tear that, they even want to tear that step down. They want to tear the foundation down, you know, but to do that in the midst of that environment that he was in, that to us was a great thing. That the things that he did to extend the DREAM Act, you know, that was just the things that he did do that we saw whenever he did something to us. How the heck did he do that? How the heck did he do that?
See,
no, that's all we could say.
I see him as somebody who was very skilled and smart and adept. He just didn't use it for helping the people.
Again, you don't have no idea. You know, you ever seen if you look at the presidents when they go in, when they come out, how grayer their hair seems to be. You and I have no idea what's going on in that atmosphere. We have no idea the threat calls made. We have no idea what's going on, but there's something going on, and it's not good.
Well, let me read another quote from chapter 3. I tried to pick out the quotes that pay homage to certain leaders in Black history. So here's what I picked out next. What stood out most strikingly about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., Ella Baker, and Fannie Lou Hamer was that they were almost visibly upset about the condition of Black America. When one saw them speak or heard their voices, they projected on a gut level that the Black situation was urgent, in need of immediate attention. One even gets the impression that their own stability and sanity rested on how soon the Black predicament could be improved. Malcolm, Martin, Ella, and Fannie were angry about the state of Black America, and this anger fueled their boldness and defiance. And Cornell is saying that that's kind of missing today.
Yeah, like I was saying, we should have a lot more great leaders, and you know, again, I think it's due to not being able to to sit our young people down and tell them the stories, the true stories about people, you know, like them and what they've done. You know, we like you said, we don't have the time. They keep us busy, so we're unable to create. And then so there's lost leaders there. Our leaders are lost. They're here, but they're lost because they're not nurtured. They're not mentored. They're not guided in that direction. So we've got a lot of missed opportunities because everybody's saying, where are the great leaders?
Well, what would it take? Like, okay, I wanted to say kind of why is that a problem, but that's probably obvious why it's a problem. But what is the solution? What could be done to cultivate leadership, the right kind of leadership?
I think that we as a people, as Black people, we don't feel like we have a right to be here in America. We feel like we're allowed to be here in America. And until we understand that America is our country, there is no other country. Everybody said, go back to Africa. You've never been there. You've never been there. So what are you talking about? This is your country. This is where your ancestors bled and died. So until
I'm going to let you continue, but let me read a quote that's right on point. This is
okay.
Cornel West. He says, "For liberals, Black people are to be included and integrated into our society and culture, while for conservatives, they are to be well behaved and worthy of acceptance by our way of life. Both fail to see that the presence and predicaments of Black people are neither additions to nor defections from American life, but rather constitutive elements of that life."
see,
If
you know,
we envision an America that does not include Black people, what kind of America is that?
exactly.
And it's not about integrating people. It's not about integrating people into the white identity. Martin Luther King told Harry Belafonte in the last days of his life, he said, "I fear we are integrating into a burning house."
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we're integrating, but what is this? What are we integrating into? What
Exactly.
kind of warlike culture are we integrating into? What
Yeah,
kind of culture are we integrating into that cares nothing about poverty?
exactly. You know, to live in a world where kids 2 years old are working, are enslaved, you know, that shows a world that has a lack of empathy. And yes, I'm like you. What kind of world is that? That's not good at all.
Partly that empathy shows up. Most Americans do not know the facts of the world. They're not reminded. Every now and then you see a starving child on TV,
Yeah,
but you don't know how that happened. You
yeah,
don't know that that was a long time coming. You
yeah.
don't know that 30,000 people a day or something like that die from preventable causes. That kids die from diarrhea like 1,000 or more a day from preventable causes. You have the Democratic Republic of the Congo is one of the richest places in the world underground and one of the poorest places in the world above ground. You have the people of Haiti, hardworking people who freed themselves 200 years ago, and they are still paying the price for that because they had to pay reparations to France for freeing themselves because they deprived the French slave owners of their property. On and on. You have immigrants coming from Central America because of the devastation and catastrophe that we have caused. People don't know the facts.
Right.
And because of the commercial interests that deprive us of any information that is adverse to the interests of the big multinational companies.
Right, right. They said that in the 15th and 16th century, slavery was 13 million in slavery. Do you know today it's 40 million in slavery? 40 million. 75% of that is women and children are 25%, make up 25% of it. So slavery is growing. It's growing. As long as there's greed, there will be slavery.
Greed, inequality, lack of opportunity, inequality of legal rights, inequality of economic, of the distribution of the economic benefits of a country.
Yes, yes.
So what are we going to do about that, Denita?
Well, I think that, again, we need to first claim our country. Claim it, claim that, this is our country and we want to help it. Who was that said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, And that's true, if we really claim this as our country, and now I'm speaking about everybody,
Right.
Black, white, red, if this is your land, your country, make it better. It's your responsibility to clean this house and keep it clean. If this is your house, it's your responsibility. Everything in it is your responsibility. Don't leave it up to just the 1%ers or, it's your responsibility. I think we've been programmed to allow others to do it for us when we shouldn't do that. We should have that patriotic pride again in our country. Look at me again. Yeah. Well, we should develop that patriotic.
Yeah. Let's go back to the good old days.
Let's develop that patriotic pride and look at, with all of its, bad days and horrible things that it's done, let's clean all that mess up, straighten it out. We could have a great country that everybody envies. Everybody looks at us as what are they doing over there in America? It's just, embarrassing.
Patriotic pride, what do you mean by that?
Patriotic,
and how does that
don't have
work?
me singing. Don't have me singing hard.
but how does that play out? How does that, okay, we get patriotic pride back, and then what? How does that help?
Oh, yeah. Pride in something, it motivates you. You ever see how the football people, fans, how they react about their team,
yeah.
And right. The basketball fans react about their team. They have motorcades out there when they win. The streets are packed. There's pride in their team. You could build that in America. Americans having pride in America. Look at us. Look at what we do over here. We have this and we have that, and there's equality for all, and you don't have it and you should. We to have that pride. That.
Let me read this quote from Cornel West. It's about 3 paragraphs, so bear with me. But this is good. He says what is to be done, and then he gives 2 solutions. So what is to be done? How do we capture a new spirit and vision to meet the challenges of the post-industrial city, post-modern culture, and post-party politics? First, we must admit that the most valuable sources for help, hope, and power consist of ourselves and our common history. As in the ages of Lincoln, Roosevelt, and King, we must look to new frameworks and languages to understand our multi-layered crisis and overcome our deep malaise. Second, we must focus our attention on the public square, I'm going to read that again. We must focus our attention on the public square, the common good that undergirds our national and global destinies. The vitality of any public square ultimately depends on how much we care about the quality of our lives together.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that what's been missing is an awareness on the part of the 99% or the 90%, an awareness on the part of the 90% that it's not, yeah, that race can be played off of against each other unless there's an awareness of our commonality in terms of class. If we, if you want to know who's picking your pocket, look up, not down.
Yeah.
Don't
Right.
blame it on the people beside you or beneath you.
Right.
Don't blame it on the poor. Don't blame it on the inner city.
Right.
Look at the people don't blame it on people who have no money and no power. If
Right.
you want to know what the problems are, look at the people that have the power to change things and they don't.
Yes. Yes. Look at the people that have the power and cause the problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think we should also think of ourselves as just pieces of a whole, and if we think of ourselves as pieces of a whole, once we unite together, that whole is what brings us power and energy to each other. Maybe if we thought of each other like that, instead of this, what is it, survival of the fittest,
And Cornell calls it the survival of the slickest.
yeah, yeah. If we have a different mindset that incorporates all of us together, just think of yourself as a piece, and you're not complete unless you are united with others. Because I tell you, down there, the protesting, if you go down there in the midst of the protesters, there's an energy that's unexplainable. It's just that energy that just comes inside of you, being around the diverse amount and diversity of the people. I've had that in big, huge churches, and when I was in Denver, Colorado, and the different cultures that were in this church, the energy that you could feel. You could feel this energy, and there's something about us when we all come together. There's something about that. There's an energy, unexplained, but it's there.
Okay, so what keeps us from that? If it's so great, why don't we do that? Why don't we go there?
Programming, programming. Like you said, look up.
Is the
Not down.
program, yeah,
Look
right.
up.
So I was going to ask, is the programming by accident or is there somebody doing the
Yeah,
programming?
programming from the powers that be. They've got to, as long as they can keep you disconnected, they can manipulate you. Once you're connected, you've got this like power, this energy, this power. Look at them. Look how connected they are with each other. They're tighter than tight, tighter than tight, and we're just fumbling around trying to find our way. But
Yeah, Martin Luther King talked about this, and I wish I had the exact verbiage, but I frequently paraphrase it. But there's a talk that he gave where he spends a few minutes talking about like if you think about the old South, let's say before slavery, during slavery, you have rich white people, the plantation owners. They own slaves, and that allows them to depress the wages of the white people. So how the poor white people are going to put up with that? Well, they have to believe that they're in a different class than the black slaves, that they're just a different class of people. The slaves are subhuman,
yeah,
and so you play them off against each other, and then so how do you get white people to cooperate in that? It's some kind of ideology that they have to buy into, and
yeah,
then you have the Jim Crow era, and the same kind of thing. If you can keep Black people desperately poor, then you still have to convince the white people that they're another class of people that's in their interest to persecute Black people. But things haven't changed much. It's those people at the top. And, so 9/11 comes along, and, the country that was supposed to, not be very racist anymore, at least not as racist as it was, all of a sudden racism against Arabs is fair game.
Yeah.
There's lots of that, and racism against, or, religious bigotry against people who practice Islam, that's fair game.
Yeah.
And you have to convince people that you have to convince Americans that the people in other countries, they're different, and there's something about them that's just different, and it's inherently violent, and there's no way you can explain, there's no way you can rationally explain their violence against us, but we're the victims here, So anyway, just taking somebody else and making them the other, even though in reality, Black people in the United States, white people in the United States, people of all ethnicities in the United States have a lot more in common with the Iraqis that are being bombed than they have with the people at the very top that are orchestrating all this.
Yeah.
Don't get me started.
If you classify people, just program your mind to dehumanize people. Dehumanizing by turning them into, that's the enemy. Dehumanizing by turning into, I'm better than they are. They're lower than I am. They're the lower class. So, and if you program yourself to think like that, then you'll always be disconnected. But if you program the people to say, hey, look, we're all in one boat and we're all after the same thing, to stay afloat and have a happy life. So why is it that you want to jump ship because you think you're better? This boat doesn't belong in this boat. You're better than, so you want to take the little raft, down the road. So if we could train people to think that way, and that's the right training. I said the right word. It's the right train. There's a right way of training, and there's a wrong way. It's just like bringing up your kids. You have to let the people understand that you have to have empathy for each other. You have to learn love. You have to let love guide you, and not hate. You have to understand that we're all wanting the same thing. That is the goal. That is the thing that keeps us all together. It is that we're all wanting the same thing: equality and a good life. Just a good life. Just let me live a good life. Take care of me while I'm here. If I'm unable to take care of myself, let's take care of each other. So if we're all wanting the same thing, then just hang on to that right there to bring people together. And I think that would work. You can't have this person wants money and this person wants a better job or this. But if you hang together and say we want equality, just want equality, and we want to be able to go wherever we want to go or be whatever we want to be, that's all we want. So you would have all these things would just come to automatic. They would just automatically come to you, So again, just focus on that one thing. We want equality. We want a better way of living. And everybody want to get on this train.
What's the next? That we are in a unique time in history. What is the next step to getting to the place that you're describing?
I think we've got to teach. We've got to teach. The people are lacking in knowledge. the television is a human programming machine. It's constantly in our faces, and it's teaching us to separate. You know, what is that show, Survivor? You know, they're cutthroating each other, and the brother's house or something like that. It's a cutthroat. You know, why they're having these certain shows, and they're programming you to self-survival. You're in self-survival mode. You know, there's nobody that's going to help you. Help yourself. You know, it's only just you, and that's it. That's you. We've got to combat that with having more talks, are objecting to shows like this. Talk shows like this, having more talk shows like this for the people, you know, podcasts for the people. Get in that head. You've got to get inside of their heads to have them, you know, to combat that, what they're putting inside, the propaganda that's being fed to us, that we're on an island alone, and no man is an island.
In that spirit, we should do this again soon. And we have to leave it there. Thanks so much, Denita Wright, for joining me. Hang on the call, but I'm going to end the recording. Thanks to our audience for joining us. Come back soon.
Glad to be here.